Hi, everyone. This is Tracy Malone from narcissistabusesupport.com. Today, I've got a very special guest. John Nachlinger is a divorce attorney, mediator, divorce coach, helping men primarily get out of their divorces. And we're going to talk to him today about when a man divorces a female narcissist and how to protect yourself because it happens all the time. And it is a very difficult situation for men to be a part of where they become the demons and the children get turned against them. So narcissists do it, whether they're male or female. Today we're talking about those female narcissists and how they present in divorce and what men need to do to protect themselves and their kids. So let's go meet John, okay? Welcome, John. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
We have a great topic, and because if you look at the statistics of percentage of male and female narcissists, it's 50 to 75% is called male narcissists, right? And so they kind of get the cred. But what if you're the 25% of a male that is with a narcissist? They don't get believed. They face a unique challenges, I think, in all my male clients, I see it where the female narcissist is using her skills not only in narcissism, but this whole female kind of weirdness that adds on a layer of crazy. So, can you start by telling me what unique challenges men face when they're divorcing a narcissist?
Well, interesting. It's very similar to a lot of the issues that women face, but I think the added one is that a lot of people don't believe men that a woman can be a narcissist, kind of what you were just talking about, how it's like a 70-30 split. So they already don't feel like they're believed, that they've been living with this person and now they're going through this divorce with this person. So the challenge is just not being believed at all. So one of the first things that really guys need to do if they're going through this situation, and we use a narcissist, but it could just be someone who's an incredibly difficult person or an asshole, just somebody who's very difficult on the other side, is document, document, document. Aren't very good at this. Women are very good at this, but document everything. Make sure that you take as much out of it, the realm of having to be believed just based on what you say. Actually have objective things that can sort of prove what it is that you're trying to convey about this difficult person on the other side. Obviously things that you would think of, emails, text messages, those sorts of communications, I would say only communicate with them through something that can be printed out and presented to a judge. And in doing that, also, men need to be very cognizant not to play the game, not to go back and forth and make you, the man's, look like they're just as bad as their wife is in going back and forth. So, that's really important. And really, if you're dealing with somebody who's making all kinds of allegations against you as a way to try to control the narrative, and it's happening around something like a custody exchange or something like that, uh, record it if you can, if that's allowed wherever you live, or have someone with you. Bring your mother, bring somebody else that can witness exactly what's occurring. Because again, you want to protect yourself as much as possible against somebody who might be dead set on using the system against you.
Good advice. Basically, as you just said, the men are not as good as females when it comes to document, but the ones that do it kick ass at it. I'm just saying, like, I saw a spreadsheet last week and I was like, oh my God, I've been telling him for a year, document, document, document. But when I saw this spreadsheet, it was amazing. Women aren't necessarily that organized. They'll document, but this one is just like every waking moment of care. And, what people need to realize and men need to realize is a judge will respond to patterns, right? So if you can connect the 14 times they did this or the different things here, it has more impact, right? So that's the importance of this documentation game. It's laborious, but if you are being attacked, you need this kind of evidence because they're going to walk all over you and, smear you and lie about you and all of these things and get others to turn on you simply so that they can win. So, they often use gaslighting. How do you think they use gaslighting? How do female narcissists use it against men? I know how the men use it against women, but how does the female narcissist use it against a man?
It's very similar. Most of these guys that are married to someone who's a true narcissist have been beaten down for years as it is. So it's really easy to gaslight them because they're sort of their self-esteem is very low to begin with, and they're so used to just being, trampled all over all the time because they don't recognize it as narcissism. So they don't recognize it as gaslighting. Most women are familiar with what gaslighting is. Men just aren't, and they perceive it as something totally different. So I mean, if you go back to the documenting, this goes to like financial stuff too. Like if you're dealing with someone who's this difficult on the other side, don't ever give them cash. Don't ever do anything there's not a paper trail to prove what you were doing. It's, I can't say it enough. You've got to protect yourself against people that are doing this. And quite frankly, your calendar is your best friend. Please use your calendar as much as possible. Um, Document everything. It's one of the first lessons I tell men when I start prepping them for divorces. Take out your calendar and anything that even remotely happens, write it down because you never know whether it's going to be important or not. So you need to make sure that you document everything. And the reason I've repeated that again is because men don't listen. I can say this a million times, men don't listen. It's very similar to protecting yourself against bogus domestic violence claims that happen. And these happen all the time.
Mhm.
And they sometimes just get used as a weapon to try to get an upper hand on custody, but they also get used by people who are narcissistic to try to control the other person. Get a restraining order against somebody and then take it away. Then get it again and take it away, and then use it as a threat to try to control somebody. So in that situation, you should audio record as much of your conversations as you can. If you can install a video camera in your house, do it. Again, you need to make sure that this is legal in whatever jurisdiction you live in. But if it is legal, and it's legal in most places, do it, protect yourself, and then that way you will have that evidence if your spouse that is this crazy person starts to make these allegations against you, and you don't have to rely upon some judge believing you over her.
Absolutely. And when it comes to the gaslighting, as you said, gaslighting is gaslighting. It doesn't matter if it's the male or the female, but I think the unique challenges to a male is the female, I'm the mother, and you have no rights to the children. You don't even know how to change their diaper. And they'll build that kind of narrative. So when it comes to gaslighting in any shape or form, it's know your rights. Am I gonna be, I had one beer with the Super Bowl party. Now she's calling me an alcoholic. Know your rights. If you are a raging alcoholic, don't do it anymore. But if you aren't, gather the proof and make sure that anything that they are using against you, you can prove, the gaslighting isn't true. But I think if well, the other tactic I see them using, is calling child protective services as a way to um, get more custody. Again, if they have you arrested here in Colorado, if you've ever been intimate with anybody and you're in a situation where someone calls the police, even if it's one in the house, one of you call the police, one has to go to jail. And so when you've got that kind of weird law on there, just know your rights, because if you are going to have child protective services called on you, and then they have you arrested and say did something or you did this, those are tactics to take away the custody. That was what I see so often in the male female kind of conundrum, because they don't have anything on the males usually, right? They're the one, that the female is the narcissist. It's doing all the bad things, so they create it. That's that false reporting. That's that false arresting. I used to run a support group in person and we'd have 40 people, we never had less than 6 people who had been arrested by their narcissists. This is
Mhm.
really common. So if that's the tactic and you have to prepare, that evidence is going to be key that you were talking about. Prove the patterns, prove what's going on, prove the truth with, actual stuff. And like you said, taking the bait. That's what they do. They push you, push you, push you till you finally react. And then they call you the angry one and get it on tape. So remember, if you are taping, so are they. And so you are always on your best behavior if you're in person with them to make sure that they don't push that anger button, get you to react, and then use that to take your kids away. So, how's that sound about for you? Does that sound like
I,
what we're doing?
I think, yeah, absolutely. But I would say, the women that are using this really are doing it more as a threat because don't forget, there's a societal sort of undercurrent that men are going to get screwed in divorce already. And so a lot of men, when they start this, even if they're not divorcing someone who's a narcissist, they already have this perception that the mother's going to have an upper hand on custody, that, that the woman's going to have an upper hand when it comes to money. I mean, I get asked at least once a week, my wife makes more than me. Am I entitled to alimony? And I'm like, all of our laws are gender neutral in the United States, in every state. But there's that perception that men can't ask for alimony, that men can't get custody. And so when you're dealing with someone who's gaslighting, somebody who's, a true narcissist, and they're just making threats, it really goes deeper because that's already been sort of baked into a lot of people's belief system about what divorce is. So a lot of times just the threat of calling the police is enough, and then if they do call the police to get a restraining order, which is used, fortunately in New Jersey, someone doesn't have to be arrested, but I do know that that is the case in a lot of states. But just the threat is usually enough to suppress a lot of these guys that are already been subjected to this over the years. And so really when you boil down, you really just need to start figuring out how to get your mindset out of the place where any of this will work on you. And that's where I think a lot of men in this situation don't even think about. They're thinking about the divorce. Yes, you need to get advice from a divorce attorney. You need to know what the law is. You need to know that no, your children cannot get taken away from you, or any of those other phrases I hear all the time. Your wife's not going to get sole custody of the kids. You're going to have custodial rights. You're going to have rights to the kids. Like, all those threats are just ridiculous, stupid threats. You
Mhm.
can't let them get to you. But part of that too is you surrounding yourself with the right professionals that can help start to get your mind around the fact that you have been with this person. Because I don't think a lot of men really can recognize when their wife is a narcissist.
Mhm.
When you've been around this person, and start trying to adjust your mindset so that the things that they're doing maybe don't impact you as much. And I really feel like that's as important as some of the other things that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. I always tell my men this, it's sort of brace for impact. Like it's going to be rapid fire, shot, 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 and accusation, accusation. And, they seem to get the worst of it. And again, percentage wise, there's not as many out there as the females that are coming for male narcissists, but the ones that do have a female narcissist, you can't make this shit up. I'll actually hold up my button. It really is over the top, unbelievable. It's so painful because they're not only affecting their children, and as we've been kind of talking about so far, but they often affect the pocketbook. What are the kind of financial tactics and manipulation that females use against males?
Well, the first one I kind of alluded to a second ago is just the allegations that you're just not supporting them. You're not supporting her or your family anymore. And
Mhm.
then sort of taking any money that is being given and sort of hiding it to sort of prove the point. That is something I see happen quite frequently because a lot of people aren't thinking. They're like, okay, my wife is asking for whatever money for whatever, so I'll just give the credit card. I'll give whatever. I'll give money, and there's no like direct evidence that you've actually given anything. So it makes it much easier to allege that you're not supporting your family.
Mhm.
And that happens very frequently. Um, but a lot of the other things, it sort of depends on where you are in the process, like during the divorce versus like during the months and years leading up to the divorce. Um, a lot of men in this situation are just convinced that it's okay that their wife is maybe not working as much as she could, or that she's not working at all. And they're sort of convinced of all these things, so that they're scared when they enter the divorce process to really make too big of an issue over their wife's income, even
Mhm.
though maybe they should, because once you're getting divorced, no one can just sit around and not do anything. I mean, if you're educated or you've got work experience, you have to go out and work. This is not the situation where when you get divorced, you just get to continue to do exactly what you were doing while you were married. I mean, it might make sense when you're married for someone to be a stay-at-home parent and someone to be working, but that no longer is the case after divorce. But some of these guys have been beaten down so much that they're so scared of their wives and so scared, particularly on custody. They get really fixated on custody, that if they push their wives too far on money, that they're going to lose custody of their kids, because they've been sort of brainwashed over all these years that that's exactly what's going to happen if they push too far.
They've been brainwashed with gaslighting that
Mhm.
if you do this, I'll take them away. And so, as you said, they walk a tightrope to try to do more. Um, they often, I see, take on a lot more responsibility than they need to. And it's done in the best interest of the children. But then even that gets abused. And I've had a lot of people, a lot of men offer to say, pay the children's expenses, blanket, I'll pay the kids' expenses. And then I see the financial abuse pull into this. And where it is, oh yeah, I just bought the kids a $12,000 scooter. Here's the bill, right? I just bought this, I bought that, here's the bill. And so setting limits, I think, is really important because they will abuse that line no matter what you draw. So if you have no line and you just take on that responsibility, you can have a clause added that says something about unilateral decisions above $50, not my problem. Above whatever your budget that you want to set is, don't go and buy a giant scooter or a giant car for your children without letting me know I'm not on the hook for that. And a lot of men don't realize that that's something they can do. Again, they're trying so hard to do the best thing for their kids. Of course, I'll get them anything. They just don't realize how that can be abused later. $400, you know, sport jersey things. Here you go, kid. This is from mom. Daddy never bought you that. Here, dad, take the bill. And it's like the power and control that comes from that purchasing power can bring the children closer to the narcissistic parent because they come off as the hero. I'm buying you this scooter. I bought you a new car. But really, it was the father because he got the bill, right? And so it gets cred for, how generous and kind they are. And so if you do not set boundaries and limits, you will be financially abused through the entire children's life because that's what the female narcissist does. She's entitled to everything. And again, she'll buy what she wants and here's the bill. So how do you see the financial parts working in the arena with female narcs?
Well, you need to have, and you've alluded to it already, you need to have very clear and detailed court orders. I mean, they need to be as clear as possible, which means everyone listening, don't be your own attorney. Don't write your own settlement agreement, because you are going to not be able to do exactly what I'm about to say. You've got to avoid vague agreements where you leave any room for interpretation. I liked what you said a second ago. Any purchase more than $50 requires written consent. And if there's not written consent, there's no responsibility. That is clear and unambiguous. I
Mhm.
mean, it's very clear. If it's more than that and you didn't give something in writing, then there's no responsibility. But that's not just money. I mean, that's your custody schedule, decision-making authority. All the financial agreements, everything needs to be spelled out very explicitly. For example, don't just say, parenting time is going to be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You need to put exactly where you're meeting, if you're meeting somewhere, who is doing the transportation. Like it needs to be very exacting.
Mhm.
And the more specific it is, the better. You cannot have too much detail. And that's on everything. You go to decision making, like if the kids are already in activities that they enjoy, put it in that the kids can stay in those activities no matter if one parent has decided that they can't do them anymore. You've got to try to make this as foolproof as possible,
Mhm.
and then whenever you've got your court order, use any of the communication tools that we have available now. There's Our Family Wizard is a very popular one that people like to use. And now you can actually do a video conferencing over it and it gets recorded. Because,
Mhm.
one of the allegations I hear all the time is mom's sitting 3 feet away watching the communication between the kid and dad. And so the
Mhm.
kid doesn't feel comfortable having the conversation.
Mhm.
Um, so I think if you have a very, very explicitly uh, specific court order, which means you need to have an attorney that knows how to do this. And you use those court order communication skills and, just avoid any direct interaction with your soon to be ex-spouse. Have all your communications through something like My Family Wizard. I think you'll go a long way towards being able to counteract some of the things you were just talking about, particularly as you get beyond the divorce.
Mhm. Absolutely. And um, a couple of other ways as you were talking, I'm like, oh, write that down, write that down. One of the other things that I see that male people against narcissists tend to acquiesce to is surrendering the house
Mm.
and going, but it's for the kids. And it's a big nut and they're often way too generous. And so to just really be mindful, to know your rights on that. And if you want to surrender the house, what happens after the kids graduate? Do you get your money back? Do you get to sell it? Just be really mindful that it's not one-stop solution. They get the house, they don't, oh, they have to move and all this other stuff. You're being manipulated by the female narcissist to give her the house, and that's not necessarily the way the law works. So know your rights, know what you can do. Do you have anything on the house that you want to chime in on? Because I see
Yeah,
it
I
all the
mean
time.
that the house is always a very important thing to usually one person. I actually has gotten to the point recently where I haven't seen that both parties really want the house anymore. But where I think the argument really starts to come in with someone, the kind of woman that you were talking about, is staying in the house and not having any financial consequences of staying in the house for a very long time. Because usually, if someone stays in the house, the other person has to buy them out.
Right.
Whatever the interest is has to be bought out. So, and you're right. Well, the kids are, we should be able to stay in here through high school. Well, that's 7 years away. Why should I have to wait 7 years? Well, it's for well, if you don't do that, then you don't care about your kids. You don't care about your kids.
Mhm.
So it is a very difficult thing to sort of look at, but you've got to control what you can control. If
Mhm.
somebody really wants to stay in the house, then what you need to do is be creative and figure out, okay, fine, stay in the house. Is there something else that I can get a value for this person to get her way on the house? Because sometimes when you're dealing with a narcissist, you have to, as hard as this is to hear, sometimes you have to give them a win on something just so you can get your divorce done. I mean, you don't want your divorce to drag on for a year or 2 years. So you got to figure out, that's the goal setting. What's most important to you,
Mhm.
and then make sure that you get what's most important to you, even if it means giving up something
Mhm.
um, to them. And there's always ways to horse trade things. You can trade support for an asset, or you can trade a retirement account for a house. There's always ways to sort of do it.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't get too caught up on becoming too possessive. And this is just general advice for everybody, but don't ever get too possessive of an asset. Just
Mhm.
don't. Like I always, if I was getting divorced, I don't know that I'd want to live in the house that I just was in with my spouse. Like, if it's not that important to you, then find a way to give it to them.
Mhm.
And if they really, really want it, then make sure your attorney makes it seem like you're playing hardball a little bit, to get something of value in return so that you can then at the end give it to them and then they feel like they won. And you really didn't lose anything because it wasn't that important to you to begin with.
Right, exactly. And I think just knowing what your goals are, as you said, and don't take the narcissist word, but go to your lawyer and go, hey, this is what she's asking for. What creative ideas can I keep my retirement? She keeps the house. Can we, negotiate this way? Can it be a buyout in X many years, or can it be something? But just don't accept the, okay, you can have the house and then the roof breaks and you're fixing it, or it's just a something that people need to be alerted of, because if the say in this case a male was the breadwinner, this is going to become a problem with the house if the other person can't afford those maintenance things after you've given them the house, or letting them use it for X many years. So be alert, because those things tend to backfire in my version of watching people with this. The other thing that I see, and I think this will be my last thing to talk about, but I see female narcissists manipulating therapy with the children,
Mm.
making sure that the therapist knows you're a demon, and just it's all about the father, and they just go in there and they shape the narrative in therapy and try to control the children and the therapist with their narrative. I see this also with like PREs, CFIs, any kind of other people that are brought into the mix. The manipulation of the story is what is always going to happen. And so how does a man deal with that kind of smear campaign, if you would, and the lies that come out in therapy with the PREs and GALs and things like that? How do they combat
Well,
lies?
Well, I think what if we're starting from the standpoint of how we're determining custody, because I mean this is not something that's just going to happen, just going to show up in therapy. It's going to show up, throughout the entire process. So if you get a good custody expert involved, who's a psychologist who can actually do an evaluation, which actually a true narcissist is going to avoid that at all costs because they're going to have to take the MMPI-2 and other evaluation tools where it might come out that they are a narcissist, or at least it's going to strongly suggest that they are.
Mhm.
So they're going to avoid that anyway. But you have to push. If you think that that you're going to have significant issues with somebody in terms of co-parenting,
Mhm.
you really should push for one of these evaluations because then you can take the full evaluation because this psychologist will not just give those evaluation tools, but they'll meet with both parents, they'll meet with the parents and the children separately, they'll talk to collateral contacts, teachers, neighbors, doctors, they'll talk to everybody. And then there'll be a report that sort of has everything in it that
Mhm.
then can be given to a therapist for a therapist to review before they start treating the children. So instead of the parents sort of shaping the narrative, you've
Mhm.
got this report already done. I've used reports just like that before when I knew therapy was going to be necessary, just so that we have something from a mental health professional already that a therapist can use. And then this is also where sometimes you get other people like a parenting coordinator involved
Mhm.
who can sort of intervene to some degree if one parent is trying to have all of these unilateral conversations with a therapist, all of those sorts of things, you can get them involved if necessary to change therapists. And then finally, just make sure that you're taking turns taking the children to therapy. Don't let her be the only one to take the kids to therapy. Make sure that you're taking turns taking the kids to therapy so that you're both having some kind of interaction with the therapist. And then
Mhm.
finally, the therapist themselves really once they meet the kids, shouldn't really be talking to the parents unless it's something about the kids. I mean, if a therapist is constantly having contact with one parent, it's time to find a new therapist. That's not really appropriate. I mean, I would demand that the therapist communicate with both of you at the same time, maybe through text messages or emails, but everyone be on the same communication thread so that you can see if this is happening in real time. There's just a multitude of things you can do, but it all starts with just identifying that you're going to have this issue and doing everything you can to protect your kids. And that's really what we're doing here, is protecting your children from one parent trying to poison them against another parent.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, what I was just thinking about was explicitly stating in that parenting plan that neither parent will be in the room with the child when they're having therapy. So many narcissists have to be there, they control it. The kid isn't free to say, mommy's making me do this, or, they're afraid because there's that, hawk over them when they're in therapy. So having a line in there that says, neither parent shall interfere or be present in the room with a child getting therapy. To me, that is the best protection against a narcissist, because that's how they manipulate the narrative with a therapist. I've heard the conversations. Well, don't forget to tell them what daddy did last time you were with him. And then the kid is not talking about what they want to talk about, but what they're being told to. And so it's a slippery slope. But I think if you can get something in there that states that they're not allowed in there, either party, it's not just against one person, but you're protecting the kid's right to privacy and getting somebody that can hear them without, mommy puppeting in their ear and telling them things that wouldn't have come out of their mouth if the parent wasn't sitting there.
I just don't understand why. I mean, therapist that would allow that. It's just that's the part that I start with. I mean, yes, you can put this in your order,
Mhm,
but a true narcissist is not going to care what's in the order anyway,
mhm,
and maybe purposely trying to interfere with therapy altogether so that no therapist wants to be involved.
mhm.
Trying to. So it's very, there's a lot of things. Well, it depends on what level of interference is going on. But the whole being in the room, absolutely, that should be in your agreement. But then, like I said, I question a therapist that would allow a parent to be in the room for every session. I guess it would depend on the age of the child to some degree, but yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
goes back. Your agreement should be as thorough and specific as possible, and it should address anything that you possibly can think of addressing. But this is a situation where a parenting coordinator is an excellent tool, because this might be something that isn't readily evident that it's going to become an issue right when you're going through everything,
right.
but it's going to become an issue and you need somebody to call those strikes and balls later on and to tell the parties, no, neither one of you is allowed to be in the room with the kids during therapy. And just so, think about what you can think about. I'm with you. There's probably, I mean, your custody agreement could probably be 100 pages long with everything that needs to be in there. But you also need to be smart about it. The more, it's like I tell everyone, the more provisions, the longer it might take to get divorced because there's more to fight about.
Sure, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And I think the therapist in this hypothetical situation, that happens all the time, um, is often charmed by the narcissist. They believe the lies. And so that's the problem. I mean, I know good therapists that just get bamboozled all the time by the charm.
mhm.
You know, we as victims, I was a victim, we got charmed into like, oh, Prince Charming, so if we can be fallen, so can a therapist, but it is how they react to your objection of, I don't think either one of them. That's what I would be looking at. If the therapist is like, no, this is perfectly fine, that's when I would get the parent coordinator involved. And for me, I see with parents, and I don't see this in a lot of parenting plans, which is upsetting to me, but naming that parent coordinator right in the parenting plan. If we do not agree, we're not going back to court. We're gonna have somebody and name them. Don't go, we'll get a parenting coordinator, because then you'll fight for 6 months over who it is.
Mhm.
Lawyers know names, take a name, pick a name, and put it in there so that there isn't that, but it's not working, and now we have to go back and get that put in. So know you'll have conflicts. Know that you need that extra support person like a parent coordinator that's going to, fight and to make the final decisions on anything that you're not agreeing on, because you will have conflict. It's just going to be a fact, right? But if you aren't running to court or waiting for a court date while your kid wants to join soccer and he's missed the deadline, right? Having that person on speed dial, if you would, is going to make your life post divorce so much more smooth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really important. And getting someone appointed after you're divorced by a judge is very difficult too, because they don't want to get parenting coordinators involved unless they really need to, because they are expensive. But you know what? They pale in comparison to how much it costs for you to hire attorneys to do everything. So, you just gotta be smart, but you know who you're dealing with. If you're in a high conflict situation, you just need to get as many barriers as possible to your spouse being able, your now ex-spouse, being able to do these things to you. And parenting coordinator, I mean, these are parenting coordinating has been something that's evolving in the country. Every state is sort of doing it a little bit different. Some states are actually putting in formal statutes and laws that govern parenting coordinating work, where the parenting coordinators actually have the authority to make decisions
Mhm.
unless they're overruled by a judge. So it's kind of like this is the decision unless a judge later on tells me I'm wrong. And that's exactly what you need, because then you almost challenge the narcissist to go into court and explain their crazy ways of why, the parenting coordinator said no one should be in the room during therapy. I mean, and no judge is going to overrule them. So yeah, I mean, there's a million different ways you can protect yourself, but it just starts with making sure you get an attorney that understands the types of provisions that need to be in these agreements, and that you can't just be like every other case. You can't just have the standard provisions. They can't just take the last settlement agreement they just drafted 2 weeks ago and just cut and paste it into this one. There needs to be some thoughtfulness. You need to make sure that the provisions are specific. And if you do, and you have the guardrails in place, like parenting coordinator and those sorts of things, um, then you can survive. You can get through it, and hopefully you can get through your kids getting to college, and then you don't have to co-parent with this person anymore, and then you're good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a perfect close. Tell me how people can find you.
Well, so if you're in New Jersey, I have a law firm in New Jersey, and the website is gethappydivorce.com. And that is exactly what we do, is we try to help people get happy again. So if you're in New Jersey, that is available. And then I do a nationwide men's divorce strategy. I don't call myself a coach, because really what I do is I help men prepare for divorce. And a lot of things we just talked about today are the things that I do when I help them prepare. So you can find out more about that at mensdivorcenetwork.com.
And I cannot thank you enough. This has been so helpful. My male audience will be like, thank you, Tracy. So thank you so much for, being brave and talking about this subject. Narcissism is out there. And if men don't understand what's happening, they'll be bulldozed by a female narc. So I'm glad that you were able to shed some light on this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you found that helpful. We'll put all of John's information down below. And remember, I am always here to help you. I work with a lot of male clients. I coach one-on-one, helping you understand your specific needs. So we'll put John's information down below, but mine's down there too. If you need any help going through this, guys, I hear ya. This is Trace Malone. Thank you so much. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you on the next video.